Hello, everybody. Our stray designers have landed. They're here. They've had a moment to have a drink and refresh themselves. So if you have not yet taken a seat, please take a seat and we will kick off very, very shortly. And you guys can come on up if you like, unless you want me to announce you in one by one like it's World Wrestling Federation. Should we do it? Tonight on the main bill, Hannah Ippolito. Facing off against Nick Ippolito, Becca O'Shea and Evie Kemp. You're there. Oh yes. That's not quite how I'd planned to introduce this, but it was kind of fun and different. Hello everyone. I hope you don't mind me doing this a lot because I'm getting old and my glasses only work for things here, not there. Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome to the Ever Room, this lovely space here on Karangahape Road for this event, Creative Journeys, brought to you by Design Assembly and Squarespace, who have very kindly helped make this happen. Thank you, Alex. Where's Alex from Squarespace? Woo! We'll cheer at her before the event. That looks like I'm angry. That's meant to be cheering. And tonight with these wonderful people, we're going to be talking a little about creative journeys and being a creative professional and how these guys and me, if you want to hear a little bit of it, have got to where we've got in our lives and our careers. We're here to talk about creative journeys, and Karangahape Road's a pretty cool place to do that because it is naturally a creative place, but it has a story, if you'll indulge me for a minute, that is to do with creatively taking a journey. So Hape was an ancestor of the Tainui Waka. And when Tainui were getting ready to navigate their way across the Pacific to Aotearoa, Hape had a club foot. He was a revered elder, possibly a tohunga of his iwi, but he had a club foot and they were only taking the able-bodied people, and he was pretty bummed out. But after a long, arduous journey, the Tainui Waka, and if I'm getting this factually wrong, it's okay. It's like myth and history can blend. As Tainui Waka came into the Waitemata and up to probably Fort Street, because that would have been the beach at that point, this call rang out, this karanga, the karanga of Hape. And he was standing up here. He was standing up on the ridge where Karangahape Road now is. Because when everyone went off on their journey without him, he was like, I think I have a creative solution to this. And he travelled here on the back of a stingray. Now, Hannah and Nick didn't get to travel here on the back of a stingray after being left behind by their waka this morning, unfortunately. But we'll try and organise that for another time. Okay, so that's a little bit about how this place got its name and why it's a cool place to have these kind of discussions. So, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, Evie Kemp.
Hello.
Round of applause. Becca O'Shea. And Nick and Hannah Ippolito. I was told to say it with my hands. And my name is Mark Easterbrook. So this is... well, everyone should get one clap at some point in their life. So we are going to do this as a Q&A type situation. It's not a I shall present my work, the next person shall present their work type thing, because I always like hearing people be put on the spot with questions. I always like people being candid about their experiences. So these guys, I've given them some questions to think about, but I'll probably throw some other ones at them. And then as we get along later in the evening, you guys can feed your questions to them as well. So that's how it's going to go. We'll do that for about an hour or so, and then you can have another drink after that. So I thought I would start with the annoying question. This is like what you call the barbecue pitch. Evie, when you go to the doctor, or you meet someone's grandma, or someone's kid throws a ball at you in the park and then comes over and goes, "Hi, what's your name?" How do you describe what you do?
Well, to that actual question, I usually just say I'm an illustrator.
Am I sharing this with them?
Microphone down here.
It's just
Can't quite reach it.
Oh, look, see, I thought I was being so prepared.
It's on your. Am I sitting on it?
Oh, this is this is the mic for the people.
We got two.
Oh, there's two. Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll pass this one over Evie. Do a little nice twirl.
Twirl the other way now. If I'm talking to someone's grandma, I'll say I'm an illustrator because I just cannot stand explaining what I do. But basically, I'm a multidisciplinary creative. I work across interiors, textiles, illustration, art, and also a lot of content creation for brands. So DIY projects, things like that. So really, just see, it's terrible.
I was going to say,
first.
you need quite a long elevator ride for that elevator pitch.
So I say, sometimes I do pictures for books.
Yeah, I just say words and ideas.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
Easy. Yes, Becca O'Shea, what's your? We talked earlier about how maybe doing a succinct pitch is not your strong point, but try it. Come on, you can do it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm also multidisciplinary creative, but my range is more around illustration, branding, all the way through to UX, UI, product design, digital interactivity, games, everything. Yeah, so I do a bit mixed bag. Yeah, so that's me.
Fantastic.
Is that short enough?
That's short. That's great. That's wonderful. Nick, over to you.
I'm a man of many words, so I'll be short as much as I can. So if you've ever been to a good website takes good technical and good creativity, but oftentimes people who are technical aren't really so good as the creativity, design-wise, and the design not so good at the technical. So Squarekicker is a company I co-founded with my wife, Hannah. We basically get to dream up creative tools to help empower the creative people to do technical things without needing to code. So yeah.
I mean, mine's really similar, but if I'm explaining it to my grandma, it's always like, do you know what Squarespace is? So I'm really pleased to be in a room of people that will know the answer to that question. But I sit in a really fun role now where I get to do a lot of the time empowering the creatives in our team, which is an interesting journey that we've come about from a creative career and now being at a point where I get to really empower lots of people within our team, which is really special.
Awesome, thank you. And, as Nick mentioned, these guys are both life partners and work partners, so that's another kind of interesting angle of... Who was that? Another interesting angle of the creative journey and their creative life. Though it did ruin my joke, which was going to be asking what it was like to travel all the way to Nelson and find someone with the same last name as you. Never mind. Hey, look, I thought it was a good joke. And if you really want to know, so I'm a copywriter, creative director. I work with brands. I write websites. I help make TV ads. I do weird stuff. You name it, I've probably put some words on it. So, sometimes it is hard to boil it down into something easy. So, journeys, that's kind of our theme, creative journeys. So I am going to throw to Becca first. Oh no. And, well, I know because you've got something good to say about this that we were talking about before. The question I want you to answer is, what was the point in your life when you kind of realised that getting to where you are now was possible in terms of professional and creative pursuits?
It's an interesting one because it actually made me forcibly reflect on where I'm at, because the journey is constant. It's not like I was thinking, I'll be this person in this many years. And I didn't really think about it that way. I mean, I had a loose goal. I wanted to be an art director at some point, and I got there. And then when I got there, it was 5 years earlier than I expected. And, life pivots all the time. So in terms of a journey, it's been kind of organic. And actually projecting that to where I am now, it's I'm just embracing the present and just taking on the opportunities as they come and really touching, being close with what I feel intuitively makes sense in my journey. So that's why I feel quite comfortable where I am now. I think just knowing what I enjoy and what I love to do. Yeah.
Great. Hannah, you were a photographer, weren't you? Or are, were.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's no
so
time for that anymore.
your journey obviously had a little bit of a wonky bit. So maybe when did you start to go, oh, this could be the way we go?
Yeah, it's been a very wonky journey. I actually started as a fashion designer. So I trained at DNA down in Christchurch. I don't know if anyone's familiar.
Yeah, Christchurch. It's
Christchurch.
largest.
Just in case, there were a lot of
Sorry,
Aucklanders here.
they didn't ask me to do this for my jokes.
I'm enjoying your jokes so far, Mark. So I started in fashion and then made custom wedding dresses and then had 2 children, and then suddenly having thousands of dollars of silk in the house wasn't so practical. So I did photography. I think I tried stopping being creative and lasted about 3 months before Nick was like, I think you need to do something. And so decided to pick up a camera. We had a friend that was working as a photographer, and I jumped on second shooting for him. Jumped on YouTube, taught myself how to shoot. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Sue Bryce, but she taught me pretty much everything I know on YouTube. She's a great Kiwi who has done amazing things in that realm. And then, we eventually kind of did that. And then when COVID came around, obviously photography wasn't really a thing anyone could do anymore. And Nick also found himself at a bit of an impasse, and that's where Squarekicker kind of came out. So if you were to ask me when I imagined myself in this role, it would be never. But it's really interesting looking back at the points in the different creative jobs that I've done and seeing how those things have actually informed some of the skills that I can now utilize in this job. And kind of, you never really know it at the time, but I think as creatives, we do a lot of different things and we collect a lot of different skills, and when you are suddenly forced into different roles, you can apply them in really interesting ways, and it's been really rewarding.
I think as creatives, we're like, who's seen Labyrinth?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So Evie, in Labyrinth, when they're in the dump and there's the old lady and she's got all the stuff holding about, I think like creatives, we're like that. We just pick things up along the way because they might be useful, and next thing you know, you're becoming a photographer, or you're going, oh, I need a website.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the Squarespace thing? Ta-da! I got in the sales pitch early. Anyway, well, now that we've engaged with you, when was it for you? When was that kind of, oh yeah, this could be a thing moment?
I honestly don't think I've found it yet. I think I sort of know it, but I'm always thinking, oh, I'm not quite there yet. Like, what does this look like? And I'm someone who's pivoted so many times, which is kind of why my whole thing has just become, I've kind of just sort of come to peace with the fact that my brand is me and I am my brand, and that therefore anything I do will link back if I'm true to myself. But as to where it takes me, I don't know. But it is like, it's, sitting here in front of this many people and being asked these questions is sort of a bit of a, oh, okay.
How did this happen?
Yeah, wow.
How did I get here?
How did I get here?
It's funny, do you think we have accidentally, because we have to hang out with them now, picked up pivot from tech people? And really...
Oh, the word pivot.
Pivoting is actually just being creative. You just follow the path where the path may lead.
Yeah.
They like to make things dramatic.
We're like little boats, and big companies are like big, shipping container, like boats, And if they want to change course, like it can take months, and then we're just like zip zip.
That's exactly the that's exactly the analogy that I used when people ask me why I left a big ad agency, because I used to feel like a guy trying to make a oil tanker change direction with a stick.
And when you work with big brands,
I'm a big guy, but I can't move a whole ship. And so it was like, I want something that's small and that I can change direction and pilot in a more interesting way. And then I went even smaller, so it was just me, because when it's just you, you can just go all over.
It's like a surfboard or
like
something, I don't know.
Like a little dragonfly.
Dragonfly, that's better.
Nick, we haven't forgotten you.
Yes,
Tell us the bits of your story. Tell us the bits of your story that don't necessarily overlap with Hannah's, about how you realised that you could be a creative person making a life for yourself.
It's interesting. I would generally just think of myself as not necessarily a creative person, but as an ideas person. Hannah often calls me the ideas man for our relationship in our business. And I have lots of different ideas. I had a whole career in youth work, which I spent most of my life doing that. And I decided, I wonder if I can make websites for a living. That'd be kind of fun too. And so I taught myself how to code and design. I thought, sure, I can make websites, and people gave me money for it, and I somehow conned them into it, and made a pretty good business out of it. And then lockdown happened and COVID, and we're like, people put stop on websites. And I had another idea, which was this kind of Squarespace extension. I thought, that could be a cool thing to play around with. So Rowan, who's here with us today, was working on it with me, and then he showed me a prototype of this thing that was a little button inside of Squarekicker or Squarespace that opened up and wrote code for you. I thought, if we can do that, we can write anything. So I asked Hannah, what do you think of this? And she's like, let's do it. Let's bet the house on it. I thought, cool. So I think that's when it started. Yeah. So that's when it intersects with the idea.
You finally found someone who would listen to the ideas and say yes.
She said yes, but she normally says no. So this is the first time she said yes. I'm like, this must be a sign. We should do it.
But designing websites, designing anything, doing creative work is often about understanding people. So there's probably stuff from being a youth worker, which totally informs the way, you just kind of understand how people function.
Yeah, I think probably with youth work, it's I'm not a very good listener, but the times I do chime in, it's listening to what people need, but actually a deeper understanding of what they want, but actually what they need. And as I was seeing lots of people asking questions online and designers and saying, I want this thing that does a thing. I'm like, well, you have a problem here, but you need a better solution than the things you have. And so I think that's where just listening to people's needs rather than just what they're wanting is going to help this product kind of take shape.
Yeah. For anyone who's young and keen and only starting their career out there, anything you can do that helps you just kind of get how people tick in unusual ways, I think is such a valuable thing in a creative career. When I was 20, I was a nightclub bouncer for 2 years.
Very
really, really polite, really sweet nightclub bouncer, but a nightclub bouncer nonetheless. And, when you've had corporate lawyers and former All Blacks and owners of major New Zealand breweries swearing in your face and threatening to sue you or punch you or whatever, and you're saying, I'm sorry, sir, you can't come in, you're intoxicated. No client is ever scary. I've never had a client rip their shirt off and challenge me to a fight, yet. I don't know, some of them have come close. High points of the journey. We're up here on a ridge. We're at the high point of a trail that Māori used to follow from Waitemata Harbour to Manukau out at Cornwallis. What have been the high points? Not necessarily the biggest high point, but what's an awesome high point you can tell us about? Who wants to go first? They're all next. I will. No, Becca.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sure. Hi. Yeah, biggest highlight. It's interesting because they used to be very materialistic, like, I want to work with the biggest brand, I want to work for Adidas, I want to do all these things. Funnily enough, did a project for Adidas last week, but through an amazing agency though, I've ended up in a point in my career where the highlights are actually the fact that I get to have this amazing work-life balance, work for myself, work with other amazing agencies. I feel very blessed that I, have a job that I love, and I think that's the highest highlight for me. Yeah.
Just being able to do cool stuff.
Fun stuff.
And people pay you for it.
And people pay me for it, which is awesome. And, even just doing illustration, that's a wonderful thing. I can do it on my couch and, it's great. You get paid to do this and you're on your couch in your pajamas.
Easy. Evie, high point for you.
I'm just going to copy Becca now because she was absolutely right.
I did a job with Adidas. Is that what you're going to say?
No, I haven't.
You could do them like a new kit bag.
I could. It probably is the people that you get to work with and the opportunities that you get, and when you stop and think, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Last month I did work for QT Hotels in Queenstown, designing a champagne parlour for Mum Champagne. So I had to go down there, style it, and then have the photos taken, stay there, drink the champagne, you know, and then it's like, and I get paid, and I'm like,
my God,
this is
it's
so
so hard.
funny.
It's so hard.
And stuff like that. Like, it never really gets old. It's sort of, even though you are working and you can get really stressed, it's still thinking like, oh, this is what I dreamed of. This is more than what I dreamed of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When someone calls you and goes, can you design a champagne parlour? And you go, oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, what? You're like, that's kind of an interesting point.
Yeah, yeah.
Hannah, for you, high point, exciting moment.
Yeah, I think, similar to kind of what Becca touched on, initially when you're starting out, you think it's going to be those big moments of doing something super creative or something that feels really important. But for us and for me, it always comes back to the people that we get to work with. And I think that's something that we hold really special in our company, and it's quite precious to us. We've got a Slack channel. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Slack, but it's like our messaging in our teams. And we have a whole channel called Best Wishes, Warmest Regards from Schitt's Creek, if anyone's a fan. And we chuck all of our comments in there. So when stuff comes in from our customers, we get to share that with the whole team so everyone gets to see it. And like some of those are like really genuinely floor us. And I had one moment last year where I got a phone call from one of our users who I'd met up with when we were traveling, and they had my phone number, and they're like, can I call you? I've got something to share. And she told me she was pregnant, and what we were able to do with Squarekicker had kind of enabled her to be at a point in her business where she could start a family and feel like she could still run her company. And like that, I think we were both on the phone just like bawling, going like, I never imagined being in a software company I would be having these kind of moments. Like, you don't go, hey, let's make software, people are going to call me and tell me about their babies. Like, it's not something I ever imagined. But those are the moments that I think keep you going when you're up at 1 a.m. trying to work through the night, or because I know we say work-life balance, but let's be honest, sometimes it takes over. And I think those are the really precious moments that kind of keep you going and have like a huge impact on what we do.
I reckon you say work-life balance, I think you can let the work get a bit much over the life if you're working with good people, which is kind of what you're talking about. When the people you're engaging with and doing your work with are awesome, that takes a lot of the unpleasantness or the stress away from when things do get a bit out of whack. What about you, Nick? High point?
I have another specific moment, actually. If anyone's ever been to New York before, it's a very cool spot. And we got the privilege to go over there for Circle Day, which is happening again in September. And last year we went to Circle Day. We were both speaking on a panel like this, but we brought our kids with us as well. So we've got 3 kids who are now, I'm going to get this wrong now, 9,
you've got 3.
11, and 13. Yeah, I think I got that right. Cool. They keep changing all the time. But just stay the same. But we were over there with them, and the Squarespace team are awesome. Like, I know like Alex is here, and she's great, but like all the people in that Squarespace team are just pretty impressive. We befriended quite a few of them, but we were having a chat with one of them, and I said, hey, our kids are in New York too. Like, can we like show them Squarespace? It'd be kind of cool for them to see it. And they're like, yeah, bring them along. So they gave them like a private tour around the building and showed them the rooftop and stuff. And they were like, well, this is pretty cool. And we're both like being able to be like excited to share this like thing that keeps taking mom and dad away all the time to these things or around the house and all the places. And they got Squarekicker shirts as well. So they're pretty proud of us in the company. But from this guy, he sat down with them and he's like, do you know what your parents even do? And he's like, they just do typey, blah, blah, blah. We're like, okay. And then he stopped and he's like, no, what your parents are making is like phenomenal. Like the stuff that you guys and your parents are doing is like stuff that is just like changing the industry. And we're both just like trying not to tear up. Like it was very humbling, and it just made us kind of this small little team and company in Nelson, New Zealand, is making an impact on the globe, but also this company in New York that we think of, the best of. They're such a cool company, but being able to be a part of that journey with our kids was like quite a special moment.
Cool. You've also partly answered a question that I had buried down the end of my list. If I felt like it was appropriate
I'll have another one.
ask.
Don't worry.
I'm intrigued that you have created a product that essentially says someone else's product isn't as good as it could be, and we've made it better, and they've embraced it. And I'm not being entirely facetious. I think that's amazing, and it says a lot for Squarespace and how they build a community where they enable their users to build new things. But was there ever kind of an awkward moment when you're like, oh, what if they go, hey, guys, what are you doing?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, with the first time we pitched Squarekicker, was before we even launched the MVP, and we knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. We got in touch with someone else, and they were working at Squarespace, and we showed them this thing, like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I would want that on my website. And we're like, really? You're not going to shut us down and like lock us out? Like, no, this is really cool. You guys should totally do this. And we're like, okay, as long as you said it, you're not going to shut us down. You're not going to lock us out.
Yeah. Can I get you on camera?
Yeah. But I guess what we've realized over the time is they're not, I guess, threatened by us, because they could build the same things that we build. Like, let's just be honest. Like, that's our biggest risk. Like, they build stuff that we've already built, and we're like, oh, that was fun for a while. But I guess what we realize is that Squarespace has a really cool niche in the market. Like, they're a DIY website builder. Like, for people who can't design and don't know what they're doing, to make a website and spin up quickly, and it looks impressive, it looks good, they can be proud of their website. And so this whole extra weird thing started up on the side where designers started using it to make websites for their clients. And they're like, oh, we didn't think they were going to do that why don't they use another platform like whatever was over here? But I think they've realized to embrace this other weird thing that's happened, but they're probably not going to make a Super Bowl ad about it. So they've just kind of kept their niche going strong, which has enabled creators to be DIY enablers, but also designers like us and you guys to make websites for clients, and then they hand it to the client, and it's really easy to use because it's been built for them, as opposed to a designed big platform like, oh, I don't know how to change the dot on that text, can you please help? So I think when they saw us come along, like we're doing all the stuff that they wish they could do, but they couldn't do it with their platform because it would kill their niche about a DIY creative. So we talked to the Squarespace employees, and they're like, I'm so glad someone's doing that, because we wanted to, but we can't. And so that's been a really fun journey working alongside them. Sometimes they build stuff that we build, but inevitably, like, there's going to be so much more we can do creatively for the designers that's way more complex that designers want, but the DIY basic user is going to get confused about. But then the designer can empower that basic user with those cool designs.
Awesome. Thank you. Those were high points. I'm going to ask about low points. They can be dumb low points. Every creative journey, every career has some crappy times along the way. I'm going to give it over to you, Hannah. Not worst, but a low point on the journey. A boggy bit at the bottom where you hit before you walked up the other side.
I mean, there are so many, right? I think you aren't in a creative business without some pretty low
This is
lows.
so that you guys feel better.
Yeah.
That you realise these guys aren't perfect.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, you get to sit on a panel like this, and I think you can sometimes give off the impression that it hasn't sucked at some points, or it hasn't been really, really hard, or we haven't struggled to get here, and we'll continue to struggle. You know, tomorrow might be the next low point that I can talk about in the next panel. But I think one that's really interesting for me when I was thinking about low points is kind of more of an attitude that I've had to battle being a woman in tech, which is an interesting position that I didn't think I would find myself in. And coming from a position of being a creative, I think we're almost innately wired to second guess ourselves and to be our worst critics. And so you kind of come with this inbuilt critic as a creative. And so kind of coming into this position with that, and the question I got asked quite frequently is, how is Nick's business going? And no, I thought you'd enjoy that one.
Can I have an oof?
Yeah. Or you know, do you still help out in Nick's business? I knew you'd feel me there. So that's been a really interesting thing to kind of battle with, and I think particularly in Nelson, you know, there's still a little bit of that. So it's maybe not as progressive as all of you cool folks up here in Auckland. But it's definitely been an interesting thing for me to battle for myself, because I think people are always going to ask that, and people are always going to make assumptions regardless of what you do. But for me to actually be really comfortable with my position and actually kind of squash that inner creative critiquer and go, no, actually I have value in this position, and that's been some really interesting discussions for us to have of like, how do we find that balance as we run a team together. And I think the biggest kind of point of me getting out of those moments when someone stops me in the supermarket and asks me that question is actually being really confident in myself and knowing what I offer, and actually being able to turn around and be like, Nick's business is great, thank you for asking, I'm going to go buy my bananas now.
Becca, what about you?
I find this question really hard to answer. I don't know why. I've had quite a positive experience.
Yeah.
But when you were mentioning about like mindset, that kind of rings true to me as well. Like there's been moments where, especially when I worked in an agency and I got further up the chain of command, what do you want to call it? It was really hard to battle with, being a high performer and having that high expectation of the work, and being that high performer I expected of other people. So learning that I needed to just actually slow down a little bit was a big one. And I only really realised that once I started working for myself, which tells you a lot as well, because I was obviously pushing a lot of high expectations. So that was a big learning for me. And also, moving into management, I found really, really difficult because I love being hand-on creative. So also being in tune with what you actually enjoy about the role and not necessarily about the role that you're going for. That was quite a challenge, just to know that I don't want to be a creative director or whatever, even though I can do those things. I'd much rather just do the doing, and I really enjoy that part of my job, and I missed the interaction with clients and stuff like that. So that would be it's not really a low point, but it was a learning.
The industries we work in are often very bad at teaching people to manage and to lead. They're like, oh, you're the best at the thing, so we're going to make you more senior and you don't get to do the thing anymore, you have to help other people do it. When I became creative director at a little agency called Good Folk, which used to be through that wall and down one floor, a friend of mine came to visit in my first month and slid this brown paper bag over my desk. It's like, a bit weird. And he goes, you'll need this. Well, he's from Jersey, so it was a bit more accented than that, but I won't try and do it. I can't remember it well enough. I'll sound terrible. But it was a book called CD01, and it was a collection of essays from creative directors and ad agencies mostly about their first year and about how no one told them what to do. And they just suddenly found themselves in this job and how they'd learned to cope. And it was great. It was very useful. But yeah. Now I just have to manage me, which is pretty good. Evie, low point.
I've got some proper good low points, like sort of comical ones. One where I had branched out and into doing a dogwear brand, and I had. Why are you already laughing? I haven't announced that.
There's nothing funnier than dogs and clothes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought, but it wasn't very funny in the end. And I was really into this. It was all like, it was all my textile designs, and I had an employee who was making the stuff for me, Basically, I wasn't happy with the quality in the end. I'd invested everything that I had at the time, which admittedly isn't much, but it was a lot for me. And basically I just kind of pulled the plug on it. And I think in hindsight, I've done that a lot when I felt nervous or moving out of my...
So I got the wiggles.
Moving out of my comfort zone, that I sort of have these excuses I make to put the brakes on, and I realised that was what I did then. But anyway, at the time, I kind of cancelled the whole thing. But I'd already had all these beautiful wooden boxes engraved to hold the dog's stuff, the collars, with all my logo on all of them. And that was our firewood for the next 2 years. No joke. Because they had all had my name on. I couldn't do anything with them. What else am I going to do with that? Yeah, so,
I thought you were going to say that everyone you knew got dogwear.
Oh, they're still getting the dogwear. They're still getting the dogwear. It was like 10 years ago. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Low point, Nick, I think we've missed you for low points.
That's right. I'm just last. That's good. So I struggle with a bit of insecurity on I want people to like me. I just have that issue. And so... Well, thank you. Appreciate you too.
I'm pretty sure she does.
So when we made this product and we put it out there for everyone to see, we're kind of like, it's a lot of your kind of self-worth almost wrapped up into this little thing. And then when people have issues with it, you're like, oh no, are people going to not like us and not like the thing and get upset or whatever it is? So early days, I was panicking. Like every time we had a negative feedback, I would spend all my energy and my attention on this person, hours thinking about it, what are they going to come back with? And I remember there's one person, it was in the weekend here in New Zealand because it's Friday pretty much everywhere else. And so I was driving our kids to like a little like party thing, and I was like, that's right, I'll tuck away in a room somewhere, and I'll do a Zoom call with this customer, and I'll get them sorted out, and it'll be great. So we did a one-on-one kind of call to help this person out, which we don't do anymore, by the way, so they don't call us. But we sat down with her, and it was probably 2 hours of this meeting back and forth because I couldn't figure it out. I felt really embarrassed, and I didn't take a breath. I just panicked. I was like, oh, we have to get them to be happy, and I don't think it would have cared. But I think when I finished that call, I was like, what just happened? Like, this is not the life that I signed up for. It's not the life that I want to live. And like, our kids are like, where's dad? And like, where is he? And so I just thought, man, this is not the kind of dad I want to be either. And so I just kind of came to this moment of like, wow, like, this is not what I want to do anymore. So we stopped doing any one-on-one calls ever again after that. But also I realized that when people come in angry, yelling, frustrated, confused, things not working, I want my money back, whatever it is, you're coming back with a very generous, nice comment. Be like, oh, thank you, you're amazing, you're the best. I'm like, that was weird. But I don't need to worry about my self-worth is not wrapped up into this thing, because if it is, then my self-worth is going to be up and down like a roller coaster. So I need to find it in something else, because if it's in this thing I'm making, that actually has taught me that it can be really unstable. So yeah, it's been a good moment, but it was a realization of like, wow, I don't want to be here. So yeah, it's a pretty low moment.
Cool, thank you. Oh, someone liked that. You got some snaps. This is like slam poetry. If we have enough time, I could read one of my poems. They're a bit old. Hey, Evie,
Yeah.
according to your website that you've built on Squarespace, you can get me a pony.
Yeah, I can.
Can we
I can.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I styled some music videos for Tammy Nelson, who's an amazing, an incredible country singer. She's Canadian Kiwi. And we were coming up with a plan for this photo shoot, and it was like, we want some horses. And we got some horses. And then we had this like beautiful horse on the beach, and then we kind of like stuck flowers all around the base of the horse, and she was wearing like her cowboy hat and her like...
The horse was, or Tammy?
Tammy.
Tammy was, okay.
Tammy. No, I was talking about the cowgirl hat. I don't know why I said cowboy. Stetson. And her sparkly dress, and it was just like so much fun. So that's why I say, if I can do anything, I can even get you a pony.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't need one.
It wasn't a pony,
I
it was a
don't need
horse.
one right now, but if I ever do. I've got another question for you. This is the freestyle questions, guys, past the ones that I was asking. I think one thing about what you do, which is probably different to what Becca and I do, especially, and a little bit different to what these guys do, is you do projects for clients, but you also do your own stuff. Like the Dogwear brand or your prints. How is it juggling that?
Yeah, that's a kind of interesting thing. I suppose when I work for clients, I often have my sort of face on things. So it's kind of hand in hand with myself as a brand versus when I don't really do sort of silent work, really behind the scenes stuff. So obviously then I guess my kind of public persona and my social media presence plays into the jobs and the clients that I get for those kind of jobs. Yeah. I've said jobs multiple times, yeah.
That's right. Projects. Ventures.
Yeah.
We could come up with some other names for them.
Those.
Slightly related question for you, Becca. Where does the needle fall for you these days if, a lot of your work's illustration, but you might be doing something that's more design, old school design. Do you ever just go, I don't actually want to do that stuff anymore, I like being over here?
100%. Actually, the last 2 months I've said no to any rollout. No more banners, no more I've gotten to that point, I'm like, no more, please. So yeah, I think that's why it's important to reflect on where you're at. Because you can take that work on if you're really desperate for the money or whatever, and you're like, oh, I could take on the extra couple of hours, sure, but there comes a point where it's soul destroying. So I've definitely pivoted more into the jobs, and I'm more selective, which I feel very privileged to say that, because I know it's not the case for everyone. But being more selective about the kinds of work that I do, whether it's like, say a company comes to me and I don't agree with them morally, I'm like, you know, and having that option is great. So I definitely am more selective, and if it's a job that it really excites me, I'll jump on it. But yeah.
A friend of mine invited me to work on a project once, which he knew I'd say no to, but he wanted to take me out for lunch so he could see my face. Anyone who follows me on Twitter, which is probably nobody, will know that I'm not shy about my political views. And he had this manila folder sitting on the table the whole time as we were eating and chatting about everything else but the job, and I'm just going, what's going on? And then he goes, right, anyway, and he slides this manila folder over the table to me and then pulls it back, and it's brief. ACT Party rebrand. And I just about started crying. I was laughing so hard. And I was like, you never thought I'd say yes, did you? And he's like, no, I knew you would. It was great, though. It was a great moment. And it said a lot about our relationship that we could do that.
A lot of like paper past your desk or a table going on.
Maybe it's
lots of sus
do I give
envelopes with mysterious
off a
content.
slightly sus secret documents vibe to people? Something that you said in there, Becca, before I took us off on a weird tangent, but I'll put to you guys maybe together with Squarekicker, and I'll ask a similar question of you guys. Where was the point with your business when you went, oh, actually this isn't falling over tomorrow? I mean, we've sort of talked about this, but like, can you kind of remember when you went, oh, actually, no, this is working?
I think it was probably about 3 months ago and 3 days ago. I think you kind of, have those moments all the time.
Yeah.
And, in different stages. And it's been really interesting running something like Squarekicker that's so different to anything we've done before. We've got a staff. Before that, Nick and I were just working by ourselves in our own companies, and so you kind of have all of these big moments where like it grows past a point that you ever thought it would, and then it's all okay, and then it grows again and it's all okay, and then it grows again and it's all okay. And I think it's been a big journey of becoming really comfortable with feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And then now being able to explain that to our team as well. I've had like several chats this week of going like, no, this is okay, this is how things work. They do feel uncomfortable sometimes, and then you kind of get over this hump and it all looks good again. So I would say every day, and sometimes at midnight.
And do you have you along the way encountered people in the tech world particularly who have always been in the tech world who kind of go, no, it's not how you do it. No, the thing you're doing is wrong.
Totally. I think, Squarekicker even as a concept is totally wrong, and can only be birthed out of brains like Nick's and Rowan's. And I think one of my favourite moments with Squarekicker was looking over, and Nick and Rowan, Rowan, where are you? You wave. Hey, Lauren's pointing at you, that'll do. They were sitting there, and they just have the most amazing brains, and it's the greatest privilege to work with them, but they're like pulling bits out of the air and like pushing it over the air, and I was watching for a minute, I was like, what is going on? And then realized they were like building this product in the air in some sort of like sci-fi world that they were living in. And I think... Have you got like some kind of special lens that the rest of us... I'm sure of it. And I think, it was moments like that where like everyone else thinks you're crazy and it will never work. And I think we just had this kind of sense of calm that actually... Like this was something that, like Nick said earlier, where like we'd listened to the needs of people. We knew it was going to solve a problem, and we were constantly told it was pretty dumb. We literally remortgaged our house with our 3 kids to start the company. We're like, what's the worst that can happen? We'll like end up divorced and living in a tent. But I think when you can have that conviction of going like, yeah, I think this is a really good idea. I think it's worth doubling down on. It almost doesn't matter what other people say. And there's good, wisdom to listening to wise advisors and things, but then also listening to a bit of a gut check of going like, do we actually think this can work? And are we going to have fun doing it? Because sometimes things can work and it's boring or not enjoyable, so what's the point anyway? So it was a good mix of all of those.
Nice. What about you, Becca? Do you still have days where you're like, oh, is this train going to crash somewhere, or you just feel like it's real now?
Especially when you work only for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's when it gets really scary, when you get a job and you're like, I just really don't want to work today, and you have no one else to pass it on to. You can't be like, oh, I'm on sick day,
Yeah.
I'm a mental health day, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, I have to work on this today and I really don't feel like it. That's a bit hard sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, people not understanding there's no sick days.
No sick days.
Oh, I've been there.
No.
I've been there.
Yeah.
What about you, Evie?
I think I still have a very sort of seasonal workload. So over summer, my workload really drops off, and I always get the jitters around kind of February, March, where I think that's it. I'm not going to get any more work. I'm going to have to start go on Seek and start applying for stuff. And I've started coaching myself sort of now in sort of December that it will be quiet for a few months.
You wanna try having an office here on K Road. You just get used to it.
But that you just sort of riding those seasons and knowing that it comes back, and that you can you got to hold your nerve a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I've been freelancing for 8 years, and it took 4 or 5 to stop thinking it's not going to work. And there's still times, like late last year, I got an email from a recruiter going, oh, there's this job, do you think you might be interested? And I was sort of spent 4 days going, yeah, maybe I am.
Yeah, that's so relatable.
Maybe I am. Oh, maybe I don't want to do my own invoices anymore. And then you think about, but I also just went for a walk for 2 hours randomly, and all that stuff that feels like it doesn't work in a full-time job. Hey, full-time jobs are cool. I'm not bagging anyone who's got one at all. Look, I'll get to questions soon because you guys have probably got some burning ones. I just wanted to ask you, Becca. We were talking about this earlier. We were sharing the fact that sometimes it's when you have to go and talk to someone else about what it is you do that you finally kind of get it. That's not really a question, but I'm hoping you're going to take the baton.
You want me to elaborate?
Okay. Can you elaborate?
A reflection on what
can
you do?
reflect?
Yeah. Because I just feel like especially when you're busy, you're just kind of like powering ahead like a train, not knowing just like to do the work. And doing events like this really makes me go like, what am I actually doing? Where is this actually going? Am I going to be doing this in 5 years? What is my business plan? Because I technically own a business, right? Or run a business. So yeah, it's good to have these moments. I think check in more often, and this has allowed me to remember that. But I often don't. I just go, oh, there's another job. Oh, yeah, I can make time for that. Oh, yeah, I'll block that in. I'll just keep going, and then the holidays never happen. And so you have to really be careful about how much you're willing to take on, and putting those boundaries in place when a really beautiful job comes up, and you're like, but I really need a break, and you actually say no to those things. Yeah, I find that really hard, but I think it's super important.
I said no to something today, but it was only writing a vet health newsletter. So it wasn't like to take a holiday. It was just to save my brain from that. Yeah, and that's when you're invited to do something like this, and you probably all feel like this. You kind of have those moments of going, me? You want to talk to me? But there's also a part of you when you've built your own thing where you go, yeah, you do want to talk to me because I did okay. I've got somewhere and I can share it. I always tell people that I'm ego-free, but I'm totally ego-free, doesn't blow his own trumpet at all. But a couple of years ago, I got asked to speak at Creative Mornings. Did anyone come to that other than Bryce? You did. I know you were there. And it was so funny when I got asked that because I had always wanted to be asked to speak at Creative Mornings. But as soon as I was asked to, I was panicking, going, oh my God, no one's going to want to hear me rambling for an hour at first thing in the morning. But anyway, it was cool. Shall we open the floor to some questions? Anyone got a question? Having done lots of events, I did warn these guys about how, as New Zealanders, we're shit at asking questions. We all sit there and go, no, I'm good, thanks. So please, reach down inside yourself. In fact, you've got a question.
Kia ora, thank you for your stories. I've got a question about if you were to start over again and you were thinking about getting into education, or you were just going to take your creativeness and just start your own brand, what would you do? Would you go down the education route, or would you just start your own thing?
Or
Yes.
not? I wouldn't go to university, but I would do other courses, workshops, online things. I think there's so many different ways to study now. I think like a full degree commitment can be a lot, especially at a different stage in your life and I feel like even when I did a graphic design degree, but I still sort of supplemented that with evening courses in textile design, and I still do stuff now. And I kind of think they're the things that probably taught me the most, as well as just getting in there and doing it. But that's just my opinion. University's so much fun. No, don't. I'm done.
Don't make me.
I would just say like any experience is good experience, right? Like you can go to uni, get experience there. You can go do an internship, get experience there. You can go to a workshop, get experience there. If you're going out on your own, connecting and networking is just as important though. It's not just how much you know and how you apply that. It's like how can I actually make a career out of this, and that's usually with connections and other people.
I mean, I went to university, but I'm not using it at all at the moment, like none of it. And I eventually paid off my debts, and so I don't have it anymore. But I learned things, but it wasn't from the school. It was like the social aspect of like how you work with people and how you stay up late to finish essays. Like those kind of things are important to, do work. But I think we've got a big team now, and it's been really interesting like being on this side of the fence and hiring people, because there's 14 of us on our team. And everyone is such a different background. And so it's interesting on this question that some people are trained, some people are not trained, and then what we look for in those people and why, I think it really depends on the person, because the people who have, say, a university degree and a software engineering spec is like, cool, like you know stuff, like you need to teach us because we need to know the things you know, and they learn them formally in a school, and that's been really helpful for our team and to the growth of them, etc. But wouldn't go well trying to teach themselves. Like it wouldn't be a skill that they could teach. They needed help to get there, but now they've got the knowledge. And there's other people in our team who have been fully self-taught in those aspects and are actually great. And I think if they went to university, that creativity would probably die because they'd be told how to learn instead of just learning that way that they do. So I think it depends on the person as much as the form in which they do actually engage the education.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% just echo everything, but I guess my one question would be, what do you feel like you're missing? And make that kind of your first port of call. So if it's something that you feel like you're missing that a formal education is going to provide, then great. But like you have said, there's so many amazing places to learn online. There's so many amazing people to learn from. And I think one of the incredible things you have in creative industry are people that are willing to share their knowledge. And that's how I got into photography, was getting alongside someone that was willing to let me tag along and learning that way. And so I think it's, what are you hoping to learn? What kind of space are you looking to fill for yourself? And what's the best way to learn that?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be such a linear way to get places, and that's how we ended up with people like me who are 2/5 of an architect, because I did 2 years of architecture school and sucked, and then went and did something else and dropped out of that as well, and then ran away and then came back, and now look at me. I did all right. Yeah.
You still got student loan though?
No, I didn't. That's basically why I went and worked in advertising, to hammer the crap out of that. But student loans. I've got a screenshot somewhere of the day it hit zero, and I was just like, yes. The funniest thing was my mother said to me, I always thought you'd end up working in advertising. And I was like, no, man, I'm never selling out to the man. I'm going to be a poet. I'm going to write the great New Zealand novel about a guy wrestling with what it is to be a Kiwi man. But it's still time. Can you indulge me one story? I don't know if anyone read the interview that I did in advance of this, but when I was at university in the very late 90s, I did a creative writing course with Witi Hamara. Amazing New Zealand novelist and teacher. And I run into Witi about every 2 years, randomly in a second-hand bookshop or at a cafe, and he asks me 3 questions every time. How are you? How's your family? Have you written your book yet? And I'm like, yeah, good, yes, no. And last year I was flying somewhere, and you get the zigzag at security at the airport, and the airport was rammed with people, and those queues were full. And Witty was like about 20 people behind me. You can see where the story is going. First pass. Hi, Mark. How are you? I'm really good, Witty. Nice to see you. Second pass, like 5 minutes later. And how's your family? Oh, they're good. My boys are good. Things have changed. Blah, blah. And then another 5 minutes of me dreading question 3. And he probably does this to every student he's ever had. And then finally we get to our third pass. And have you written your book yet? I'm like, no. I wrote some ads. Oh? Yeah, it's just like run. I'd rather get arrested at the airport than answer this question again.
Can I ask a question, Mark, on that?
Yes.
Of writing your book and for you guys, do you make time for your own creative projects? And if you do, how do you find that space and how do you prioritize it?
Should we get that from everyone?
You can go first.
Can I go? Oh, Nick? You?
So I taught myself how to code when I was trying to make websites. Out of frustration, I wanted to make things that I couldn't make with the tools I had. So someone just said, just learn how to code. I'm like, fine. So I just spent hours online and tutorials and cool. I did. Well, the thing is, I did love it. And it was the power behind, you can create something visually with code. It was this quite a cool, satisfying thing. So once I went on this cool thing of making websites, and I can make any website pretty much I wanted on Squarespace with if I can code enough things. And then I met people who could code better than me. And I was like, well, you should probably code this. And so I actually haven't written a single line of Squarekicker code to this day, 4 years later. But I get hungry and thirsty because I don't make websites anymore either. We kind of shut down that part of the business. So every once in a while I'm like, I want to make something. I just get really excited about making something. And so I'm so busy during the day. So it's usually in the evening, I got nothing else to do because I'm kind of caught up, and I'll just kind of tinker with something that I've never done before on code. So I use my evenings to kind of code that. I think I made a Chrome extension so we can do better, cool customer support stuff and read Squarespace websites and pull out things that we're never going to release to anyone. So I don't have to worry about it being terrible, but it's a fun inside house project. So I enjoy learning and tinkering with code, even though it's never going to go into production and your guys' hands to do stuff. But yeah, that's what I enjoy doing.
Cool.
I have been terrible at this lately. I looked at my Instagram the other day and I hadn't posted it in 4 months or something, maybe longer. And then I also realized I hadn't done a personal illustration in almost a year, which was quite a shock because, it didn't feel like that long ago, but I was like, whoa, it's been a year. So finding time has been really difficult lately, but I think holding yourself accountable, I did a bunch of challenges, those challenges that they throw out there and they seem a little bit silly, but it gets me doing stuff, just starting. It can be tricky, but once you're starting, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of go through cycles the same, that I could go a whole year and realize I haven't actually drawn or painted anything for myself. And then I get kind of a bit antsy about it. I always feel like I need a whole day. If I have some kind of work thing or a meeting, I just can't get it in the flow, which kind of destroys all my plans around this. But on Friday, I did actually just paint. I had a big job cancelled, and I was like, okay. And I forced myself to sit down and paint, and it was so good. It was so good. And I sort of feel like maybe I've just turned that tap on. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I never write anything except for maybe once a year a poem pops out. But I kind of channel, again, I said this in my interview before this, I channel that bit of me into service stuff. So I've got a couple of charities I'm involved with, and I think it fills that hole in a different way, because when I've been writing all day, I don't want to write some more. So I'm the chair of a charity called, I'm just going to do a plug. I'm the chair of a charity called Mix It, and we work with refugee and migrant young people and use the performing arts as a vehicle to give them life skills and confidence and friendships and stuff, and it's awesome. So if any of you are rich, give us your money. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? I've got one down the back there. Oh, no one here? Sorry.
I already got the mic.
Oh, sorry, have you been sitting there the whole time? And we
Yeah, I
went off
almost
on this
forgot my
tangent?
question. No, kia ora, I'm Francesca, and I've been freelancing for 8 months now, so it's been really inspiring to kind of hear your guys' creative journeys. One thing that I sometimes think about is how do I pivot into work that I don't necessarily have the exact portfolio project for, but I know I could do it. What's your guys' approach? That I know that a few of you have mentioned you quite multidisciplinary, which is how I like to think of myself as well. But yeah, it's kind of getting someone convinced that yes, I can help you with that. I've got these projects that are somewhat related or that deal with similar issues. But yeah, how do you get into work that you don't have work for but would love to do?
I've got some thoughts, but have you got Evie, share your thoughts.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I've worked my kind of whole life. No, in that I sort of know what I want, and then I kind of do a self-motivated project of some kind, and I share it. And so kind of Instagram is where I get most of my work from, and some projects might seem a bit left field, but they're also the kind of thing that I'm sort of chasing. So you can kind of have a look, and you can sort of read what I'm sort of aiming for. And another thing is with that it doesn't have to be a complete thing. Like in interiors, you don't have to have had an actual interior design project to be able to put together a really banging mood board, and really show your unique voice, your unique style, tag the brands, tag the companies you want to work for, share with people, network with people, and people will just keep, you'll be popping up in people's minds for certain jobs. So it's kind of just putting yourself out there, even if you haven't done it yet, thinking what things can you do now that won't take you all year, Then so you're sort of saying that with the things that you've got that connect to it. You can sort of repackage things as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a thought, Becca?
I was just going to ask, is this say someone's come to you and asked if you can do it, or is this something that you're wanting to apply for?
No, it's something I see and I'm like, that's a cool idea, I like it.
Ah, nice.
Or it's an idea that I have and I haven't seen it out there yet. So, kind of that sort of thing. But going up to talking to someone, be like, I could do this project with you.
Like
how
a
can I
cold
make you
call was
trust
scary.
me?
Yeah. I would just echo what she was saying as well. Yeah. Definitely just experiment and put it out there. And I've definitely noticed even in my own portfolio, the more work I put on my portfolio that I want to do more of, the more I get, because they see that and they're like, oh, I like that, I'll do that.
Take the stuff you don't want off.
Yes, exactly. Remove the stuff you're like, I never want to do that again. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you just show it and put it out there, even if it takes a little bit of extra time, to create those experiments, it could be worth it if that's the kind of work you want to do.
Yeah. And, massive oversimplification. But as designers, as a copywriter, as creatives in general, we're actually problem solvers. That's what we do. We solve problems for people. The problem might be that you want to sell a car. The problem might be that you want someone to believe something. The problem might be that you want people to feel something. But we find those challenges and we've solved them. And that skill set is endlessly transferable. Once you've shown people you can solve problems, and that you don't have to always be solving the same problem, because if you helicopter up to that macro level, they all start to be quite similar, really, in terms of what's needed. So, yeah, I've made a virtue out of not having a niche, and it's partly because someone can go, oh, do you know about... And I'm like, sure. And then very quickly work out some stuff about it, and see what is universal about it. There's always and what can transfer in, because if you're selling cars and every time you want to do an ad for them, just random example, you go to someone who's written car ads, you're just going to keep ending up with something that feels like a car ad.
So how do you find the person that can see past the fact that you're not just wanting to do a car ad? Like, how do you find the creative people that give you jobs? Does that make sense?
I have the benefit of being a little bit old and having been in the same place for a long time, in Auckland building networks. But I've always just tried to do good work that does the job that people needed it to do well, so that you build the trust, and then when they meet someone who goes, I need someone who could do this, they go, I know just the person, I trust them, you can trust them too. I think that's a lot of it, is building trust with the people you do work with, even on the things that aren't the things you want to be doing, because over time that aura of trust, I guess, around you becomes a thing. I've had a very fortunate career in terms of the way that unusual opportunities pop up, and I know not everyone gets that, so I do always try and temper any sort of upbeat advice I give through with that. But it's building the trust. Hannah has a thought.
I want to yes and this, because I totally agree with everything everyone said. But I think one thing as Kiwis, what we often don't do is pitch ourselves really well, and we are kind of a little shy about sharing what we do. And this is going to also be a pitch for Squarespace, because one thing that Nick used to do with his web design business... Good,
because I haven't done enough of that, probably.
I'm going to get one in for you, Mark, don't worry. Is he would make like an unlisted page on Squarespace and pitch that for a client. So he would put like their logo on there and their, the ideas he's got for that project, maybe some examples. If you've got some personal work that's related to this thing that you want to pitch, chuck that on there. Put a quote from someone that you've worked with that trusts you to build that in, and then you can actually send that unlinked page to that person or talk them through it as you're pitching it. And there's like a really beautiful personalized pitch deck for them that shows that you've really put some thought into it, and it feels really cool because it's kind of hidden behind.
Is there anything Squarespace can't do?
And it feels so fancy, right? Because it's like, it's not listed on your main website, so it feels like you've put this together personally for them. You can literally like hit duplicate, change the logo, pitch it to the next person, so make it smart. But yeah, it's a really good way for you to actually be able to put your foot forward and say, like, I can do this project. Because I think as Kiwis, that's not something that often we're really naturally inclined to do. And you're kind of like, I do work and it's good. Do you want to find me?
Could you please pay me?
Which works sometimes.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
If you're doing really cool stuff, find a cool way to package it and make that person feel really special, and like you've given them this really personal presentation, and that can go a long way to kind of getting a foot in a door and starting to build those opportunities.
I'll just add one thing, because I am American and we talk about ourselves a lot. It's something I'm working on. But just for me, starting out as a web designer, I was really obviously like, I don't know what I'm doing. Someone has to try it with me first so I can actually have a portfolio. But it was just having confidence that I've got this, I could do it if someone gave me a chance. So I just went in full blazing like, yeah, I could totally do that. Never done it before, didn't tell them that, but I could totally do that for you. And just the confidence was enough for me to be able to go and learn how to do it. And then because I kept doing that over and over again, I started creating networks, but also a niche because I kept saying yes and trying to figure things out. And then I got to pitch for the jobs that I wanted to do, like you were saying, and I started hanging out with the people in those networks of the people I was enjoying being around, and then that allowed me to kind of, just when you have confidence in something, confidence in yourself, which sometimes it's hard to do because we have imposter syndrome, like people are going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and then they're going to find out I'm never going to get work again. Like, it's a real thing, but yeah, the confidence factor is quite keen.
Great.
That's super helpful. Thank you guys so much.
Has anyone been through the All Blacks experience at Sky City? Ever? Oh, it's like no one here has ever done anything that touches on my life. Massive, multi-dimensional, multi-interactive, what's the word I'm looking for? Multimedia experience for tourists down there. And I got this phone call out of the blue one day going, we're looking for someone to help us on this project, and would you be keen, and can we fly you down to Wellington for 2 days to work on it with us? And I just sat there going, I haven't got a freaking clue what they need me to do as a writer for this. But it was like, okay, sure. When did you want me to come down? And I went down and I was in these people's studio and they kind of gave me a workspace and I just stood there with all this info, all the stuff I'd already done. And I was just panicking, going, I don't know what they think I'm going to bring to this. But by the end of that project, it was amazing and we all worked together. And then off the back of that project, they brought me into an even more amazing project, which again, I sat in a room panicking. But you just have to, someone said earlier, the being comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's everything. And it's a hard place to get to. But when you can get to a place where you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, that opens up a lot of doors, I think. Question, there was one right down the back, I think.
So good one too. I just wanted to ask each of you, and if you all share the stories. So my question is, how have you managed to integrate your personal and professional branding without losing the integrity of either?
I think I've rebranded about. No, I was just gonna say I think I've rebranded about 4 times, so I don't know if that tells you much, but it's really hard when you're selling yourself. And like some people ask me, like, "Oh, you're not a freelancer, you're a business. Why don't you have a business name and stuff like that?" I feel like going under my own name is more authentic. I don't know if you find the same thing, but I'm a person delivering a service, and it's not only through my personal work, but also my client relationships. I'm a human being working through your problems, that you're bringing that to life. So I really love that authenticity about combining those two. So I find that they blur together a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say the same. And it's kind of funny because I sort of feel like the more confidence I get in myself, the more confidence I have in my business, the more confidence I have in my business, the more confidence I have in myself. So yeah, it's kind of staying true to yourself either way. And that might be, like you say, like, the app party might be paying you big bucks, but you're like, no, this isn't for me, even in a professional capacity. And then just always feeling happy with the decisions that you make, I think. But I think it's something I always want to say is that, like, the most interesting thing about your business is you. And no matter what you do or what you think, and maybe you think, oh, it's not, my work's way better than me. People are so interested in you, and I think, like, you can only ever benefit from putting yourself out there as part of your business. So, yeah.
I actually have been through this year because I finally, after 8 years of meaning to, decided to properly rebrand my business, which is just my last name now, or it was before with things tacked on. And I worked with a designer friend of mine, Emma Rogan, to work on the brand ID. But it was interesting because for the first part of the process, it was sort of, I was struggling to crystallise what I wanted, and I kept sending her random things like, here's the same, these 4 shirts are basically what I've worn for 20 years, variations of, this is me. But I realised I was trying to get her to brand me. And then I went, no, you're trying to get it, she needs to brand the business. And yes, the business is me, but it's a slightly different thing to me, the person. And that was quite a tricky thing to do, that little separation and go, okay, they're not the same thing. And just finding the right way to balance the two, so that then, but at the end of the day, it is you are a business, and what you put out into the world is going to reflect on you as the person in a way that an anonymous business name, so when I sit in a room full of people and I bag a party that's in government in New Zealand at the moment, that could come back and bite me in the ass in so many ways.
But I think on that, you have your business, it has a name. You have a business name, and yet you still put yourselves front and centre.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this. So it's interesting, when I started out, my web design business was called Frontier Media, not Nick Ippolito Design or whatever. And I stuck behind a logo and a name because there was, again, insecurity. Like, I don't want to, I'll just say, we do lots of cool stuff, and I'm like, it's just me. And then I'm the creative director. And
my pet hate, the one-man band who says we.
It was so much insecurity going on until I just kind of woke up one day and was like, it's just me. Like, I don't need to pretend. Because eventually when I meet with them, like, where are your offices? I'm like, oh gosh, I have to go find a cafe now. Like, people want to think I work from home. It's terrible now. I think I'm a whole agency and it's just actually me. But I guess I got out of my skin and thought, okay, I'm a real person. Put my photo on my website. Like, I'm Frontier Media. This is me. I'm running my business. And when I actually had more people involved in the team, it started like, Frontier Media is not just me anymore, it's us. And it actually put the people in front of the company. So when you met with Frontier Media, it was actually meeting with the people, not the logo anymore. And when we started Squarekicker, it was again kind of the same. It was like our faces. We weren't hiding behind a name or a logo. It was actually the brand was the people. And it came out of that as our core value of our company. The number one that we talk about all the time is he tangata, which is the people is the most important thing. And so we celebrate diversity. We celebrate the people in our team, the people we work with, and we put them on the camera. We put them on Instagram. We put them everywhere because it's about us as people connecting with people. So that's what we wanted to be a brand known as. So our webinars we do, the customer support we do, it's always like a Loom video with the person hanging out with another person. So yeah, I think we tried as much as we can to connect with people, even though we're a brand that's a logo. So that's what we kind of try to pitch.
Yeah, awesome. We're probably getting close to the end, but we can have a couple more questions. There's a pointer. Someone's pointing at someone over there who's going, no, shut up.
Hello.
Hello.
What? Stand up? Okay. Hi, guys. As a young person who wants to go into the creative industry, it's kind of scary because there's not much stability. Well, it's not as stable as a lot of other jobs, and also with the rise of AI, it can be exciting but also scary because there's a chance that it can take a lot of the jobs away from the industry. And I was just wondering your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah. Should we do a quick round of AI opinions?
Yeah, I think, if
and
creatives are worried about AI, the question I always ask is point to me the client that perfectly described what they want the end project to look like, because that's what you need to make AI work well. But I think, my one-liner on AI is probably AI won't replace creatives, but creators who don't use AI will get replaced. I think there are some amazing tools and there's a lot that we can utilize as creatives, and so it's learning to figure out which ones are going to work really well for you, how you can maximize those, get them to do the jobs that take time that you don't love doing, and it actually should allow you to spend more time doing the jobs that you do love doing. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunities for creatives to utilize AI really well, and I genuinely think it's one of the jobs that will be least at risk by AI, simply because, like we've said so many times, it's people talking to people, and you have to understand their needs and be able to walk them through a solution that they may not have seen.
I'll be short and I'll pass it on. I think it's interesting with the creative market is because AI is kind of relatively new, or at least it's really popular. It's been around for a while, but it's really fast. Everyone's seen it. We're starting to now, a year or so on, starting to recognize, oh, that's definitely AI. That's been written by a bot. That we're starting to kind of be in tune with what we can see as AI or not. And I think they'll get better, but you're always going to be able to look at something and say, that image was made by AI, that website was made by AI, whatever that thing is, that looks generated by AI. So I think people are going to start craving actual real creativity because people have those tools themselves, but they don't know what to do with it, or it looks kind of It's going to be like those DIY website things you have, and actually, I need a real professional to help me out because my website doesn't look as good as that one, but I have the same tool. So what do you do that's so different that makes that? So I think there's always going to be room for a creative to kind of come along and actually make it a connection with a person, because there's a connection with a computer, but not a person. I think that's distinguished about a designer working on a project.
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be new tools coming out. I mean, when Figma came out, it was like, oh my gosh, collaboration. Oh, and then you have Canva and all those things, and you're like, oh, the client's taking over my job. Or, these things keep coming out, but they never really truly replace the experience you get with someone who is knowledgeable in that area. And I've had a few instances even recently where people have gone to Fiverr, hated it, gone to AI, don't have a SVG file that they can use on their website. There are limitations to it already. I mean, I don't know how far it's going to go, and we don't know that, but I think to be ignorant of it and not educate yourself at least a little bit in these tools, I think that's the best power to have in this scary time, is to actually know what it is and see it for what it is and see the usefulness for yourself, because it becomes less scary because you know more about it as well.
Yeah, one of my first jobs was doing layouts at the New Zealand Herald, and when I started, it was on Photoshop, but quite very basic Photoshop. But there were a lot of people there who had learned typesetting, traditional typesetting, and they were just kind of so dismissive of Photoshop, I think because they were scared for their jobs. And I kind of see it really similarly to this. because at the time they're thinking, but you won't ever understand kerning, you won't ever understand typesetting to the kind of level that you do when you're physically placing letters. And obviously that's not really kind of thought of now. It's like there's still a person, there's still a creative, there's still someone with knowledge using those tools. So like you said, there's always going to be new tools, and I think if you just kind of keep up with them, you can kind of keep ahead of them.
This is my make a stand moment. This is a rallying call for all of us who work in the creative industries. Absolutely use all the tools that come our way to do better work. But remember that tools lift the bar. And so to be better than everything else that's out there, you have to be here. And if there is one thing I have learned in 20-something years of being a creative professional, and it's a funny thing being a copywriter, because it's never just you. You are part of a project. And no tool will ever get to the same destination that me sitting with Becca and working on an illustration that I'm briefing her on, and us having a back and forth, and what about this, what about that, I don't like that. Or make my friend over here who's an amazing photographer, hire him. Working on a photographic project with a photographer and having them go, but what if we did this, what if we did that? Hey, let's try and get this response out of someone, or with a film director, or with anyone. That's where the magic happens. And I've often surprised people when I say I don't really care that much about the end product of my work. I love the making of the work and those connections with people, which is weird because I work by myself in an empty room down the road most of the time. But it's the process, that's the people, it's the back and forth, and that's what makes things really good. And, no tool that is just pulling on everything else that's ever been done and averaging it is going to find that little magical spark that we're all capable of, especially between each other, making happen. Yeah! Imagine if I had written the ACT Party Manifesto. It would have been so persuasive. Any more questions? We can probably squeeze in one more. Hello. She's running. She's coming.
Hello there. So what I want to know, in terms of inspiration, what are your, for all of you, what are your personal favorite areas of inspiration you can constantly go to get inspiration from? Places, sites, media, maybe you have a favorite artist who you can always go to. Like, in broad terms, what areas do you always rely on or look to for inspiration?
Cool.
Oh, sorry, I didn't actually realise I was holding it.
You're holding it, so you better use it.
I think probably like a lot of people in this room, it's coming from all directions all the time. I love a walk around an art gallery. I just find that just really feeds my soul, and I love a good art book as well. But I also really, really love TV. Like at the moment, I'm rewatching Supernatural, which is a bit of a niche. Yeah, okay, cool, great. Yes! And like the motel rooms they have in this kind of trashy show are so iconic. In each episode, you sort of think someone's taken a load of time to design these kind of retro motel rooms for this, weird show. And how cool that is. And I just think sometimes things like that really spark something in you. So I feel like if you're always looking, you'll always find.
I agree. Actually, it's funny because I went to uni, but a lot of the stuff, the material that I absorbed there comes up in my mind again even today. Like, we did, and even art history in high school, there's artists that I remember and they stay in your brain and you're absorbing stuff all the time. So I often find like a walk is great because it brings those to the surface, but also just starting with a pen and paper always is great, because I often find that the first thing I draw, like one or two of the first things that I draw on paper ends up being the final logo rather than being, tinkering away on a computer. I feel like there's something about hand drawing, you just get a better translation from your brain to paper. So that's my way. Yeah.
Cool. We live in the country, and so we kind of get out of the. That's not hustle and bustle. It's Nelson. I don't know why I'm talking hustle and bustle, but for us, it feels like we're leaving the city. We can still see it. It's like 30 minutes away, but we're leaving the city. So we're a bit of the land, and so I really enjoy getting outside and doing something with my hands. Either it's lawn mowing or it's building something with wood or. It's true. Well, our kids are taking over it because they get paid now or something. So, but building something with my hands. So if it's wood, like I built our team, all of our desks. So we keep, that keeps me active. And we build our team hand-built desks. And so I love doing something. And when I'm out there, kind of away from the screens and away from like the emails, etc., that's where my creativity comes in because I'm just thinking, I'm pondering, and what if we did this? And I get really excited. So I think my creative juices actually flow when I'm getting outside, specifically when I'm busy with my hands doing something creative. That kind of triggers my brain to kind of have other creative thoughts.
Yeah, I think I have two answers to this. One is the kind of idealistic answer, and one is the practical answer when work has to be done. The idealistic one being I'm quite introverted and married to a very loud American extrovert. So getting out and going for a run by myself and actually having some headspace, I think like Becca said, we're absorbing all the time, and so often it is just getting some clarity. And then you come back and you're like, oh good, I've got all the ideas and they're there. But in a practical sense, that doesn't always happen, right? You've got a project due, and sometimes you just have to stick it out and get it done. So one thing that Lauren and I do on our team is we have like a few websites that we have saved into like a file, and we're like, okay, got to get this project out. Let's spark some creativity. And we haul through Unsplash. We've got like awards, which is the award-winning websites. A few of those, and we just have them saved in a file so that we can go, and it's normally like Friday afternoons, grab a beer, some chips, and we just haul through that file. There's no fire there. Haul through that file until something sparks. Usually there's some giggles when you find some really weird photo on Unsplash, which is always a good time, and then that's sometimes how you just have to get it done and force it a little bit.
I'll add to that. There is a practical side, obviously. I do use Pinterest. I'm sure all of you do. But it's you have to be very careful with it because everyone who uses Pinterest is going to end up with the same logo, But it is very good, like once you do have an idea in your mind, to find resources to show a mood board, say, to a client to actually translate that to them. So I find those things quite useful. Or like you say, awards is awesome. Like Site Inspire, there's a bunch of amazing, even it's nice that, the blog, there's heaps of amazing resources out there that can inspire and also add to those mood boards for clients too, or show a practical website, for example, if you need to show them how it works or how it could work. So yeah.
Site Inspire is really good.
Awesome. I'll just add to it, events like this, for me, I made a really conscious decision about 10 years ago to not sit in the same building all day and night working and eating my lunch at my desk and try and go to things. And I think I went to semi-permanent for the first time, and I was just like... and, not everything has to be a 3-day design conference. A couple of hours like this, a creative mornings, a talk about something that's not really related to what you do but is kind of interesting. There's nothing cooler than hearing people who do cool stuff enthusiastically talking about it. To get you vibe off that feeling. You go, oh, that's how I want to feel. So I love hearing people talk about what they do and why they love it, whatever it is, whether it's an artist's talk or a lecture on something random or, and I can be a bit of an introvert, but I like to be out and around people and turning to the person next to you and saying, hi, what brings you here? Scared the shit out of me about 10 years ago, believe it or not. But it's just cool, and you meet interesting people and you hear interesting things. So yeah, just be around people, interesting places. Wander K Road. I felt very empty for a long time because I wasn't working here on K Road. And it took a while to work out what I was missing. There's something about this place that for me in particular really resonates. And it's like, it reminds you every day that there isn't this picture perfect sanitized, New Zealand that a lot of people would like you to believe there is. It's way messier than that, but in a gloriously messy way. And yeah, I like being reminded that it's all a bit of a mess and that none of us are perfect. I'm getting way too profound, eh? Hey, we better call it quits because it's a school night and you've all been very patient. First of all, a huge thank you to Hannah and Nick, and apologies to those of you who were going to do a workshop with them today, and because we couldn't charter them a stay away, you didn't get to do it. But plans are in place. So I feel a little bit bad that I'm calling for a shared round of applause, but you are Squarekicker. Okay, you guys can share. And a round of applause also for Becca and for Evie, who have talked about their what life is like when you're a business and a brand and a freelancer all rolled into one and doing cool creative things. So thank you. And on that note, I would like to say a big thank you to Squarespace and to Alex from Squarespace in Sydney, who's down there somewhere, for bringing us together and bringing you guys all together. Thank you to Louise from Design Assembly for making this happen. And for those of you who are not paid up Design Assembly friends, become one. Go on. It's not that much, and it makes you part of something awesome, which is events like this. And it means that Louise can make cool table talkers instead of having to do it on a post-it note, which wouldn't have been as exciting. So thank you all for coming out tonight to Creative Journeys with Design Assembly and Squarespace. Have a drink and a nibble, hang around for a little while. I think we're allowed to be here for a little bit longer, aren't we, Louise? Yes, there we go. So no one's kicking you out. If you have questions for these guys and you were too shy to ask because you're New Zealanders, hit them up and ask one-to-one. But one last round of applause for everyone.